We are going to jump to page 51 in the review guide. Today we're talking about wars and turning points. Okay, so those are the two things we're going to look at. So just looking at that list of wars on page 51, let's just differentiate this list. Because warfare sort of changes in what's being fought over. So at the beginning we've got 5 conflicts: the Schmalkadic League, Spain versus England, the French Wars of Religion, the 30 Years' War, and the English Civil War. These are all more or less the wars of religion. So those first 5 all are wars of religion, more or less. Religion is playing a pretty big role in those wars. But remember that the name wars of religion overstresses the importance of religion in those conflicts and does not acknowledge the important role that politics plays in every single one of those conflicts. And what is the dynamic, the political dynamic that's causing those wars? Kings versus nobles, okay? So we've got the king, or the highest sovereign in an area, and the nobles who have these historic rights who are resisting the concentration of power in the central monarch. Okay? Now, so kings versus nobles, the terms in the Holy Roman Empire, we've got emperor there instead of the term king, and then the elites in the Holy Roman Empire are the princes. So there it's emperor versus prince. Okay, now when we go below that, after those wars of religion, it's not surprising that in the aftermath of that, we've got the rise of Louis XIV. France is the most important country. And so we've got 2 key wars to remember from Louis XIV. He fights several more, but we want to remember these 2 wars of his, the War of the League of Augsburg and the War of Spanish Succession. So these wars are not about religion, right? They're about maintaining the balance of power. Louis XIV wants to expand French power, and a coalition of states will ally to stop Louis from expanding power. Okay, so that is key just to see that dynamic. We went from religion and this dynamic about internal, absolute, king versus nobles, but now it's going to shift, especially as the kings emerge victorious in these consolidated, centralized states. And so kings like Louis XIV, he's going to upset that balance of power or threaten it. Now, our next 2 conflicts, the War of Austrian Succession and the 7 Years' War, these are 18th century conflicts. So these are both in the middle of the 1700s. The middle of the 1700s. And these are about 2 things. Both of these are about 2 things. One, power within, or power on the European continent. And secondly, overseas, maritime power. Okay? And so both of these will have both a continental army front, and then this overseas front as well in the 18th century. That's why your book discussed these these 2 wars in the section about colonial overseas mercantile empires. Now, after that, at the end of the 18th century, we've got the French Revolution, right? And so the French Revolution will be a new phase in warfare because we're going to have a strong nationalistic French army that will be large because there's going to be a draft. And so this will once again upset the balance of power. And Napoleon, of course, will be able to take over most of Europe in the aftermath of this in the aftermath of the French Revolution. And once again, just like Louis XIV, we see a coalition of states that will together respond to stop Napoleon. Okay, so that's just going through the bigger things going on up to that point. So let's go through these conflicts now one at a time. Okay, so the Schmalkaldic League versus the Holy Roman Emperor. Now, if you remember, after Luther's 95 Theses, 1517, we see that many German princes see reform in the church as a way to increase their power over the territories they govern. So, the Holy Roman Emperor's job is to protect the Holy Catholic Church. And so the Holy Roman Emperor is defending the Catholic Church. But many princes argue, hey, we have the right to control the religion in our area. We have the right to reform the church in our area as we see fit. The emperor attempts to condemn Luther at the Diet at Worms, where the Diet rules that Luther must cease and desist, right? They condemn Luther. But Luther's not killed because the northern German princes protect him, specifically Frederick of Saxony, who rescues Luther and puts him in his castle, where Luther will translate the Bible and write all these letters that will be mass published and sent out across Germany. So what we have here is this dynamic. We've got the emperor wanting to have control over the empire. We've got princes in the north resisting imperial control. And this question ultimately of who controls what religion will be observed in the empire. And so it's both about religion, Catholic versus Protestant, or Lutheran in this case, and it's about politics. Now, what happens is that war breaks out in the 1540s and 1550s, and it ends with the 1555 Peace of Augsburg. And the Peace of Augsburg says, Cujus regio, eius religio, or in other words, whose region, his religion. And it allows the princes to choose between Catholicism and Lutheranism. In other words, the northern German princes win this conflict. They are able to determine their religion. And so this will be very important in German history, because we wonder, why does France consolidate and Germany never consolidates? Well, one of the reasons is that Germany will now be divided religiously from this point to the present day, right? Northern Germany will be mainly Protestant, and many southern German states will remain Catholic, and so there won't be one dominant religion in Germany.